I am here with my really good friend, Kashi. Kashi, can you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yes, so I'm so excited to be here today. I'm Kashi Sehgal, and I am founder and CEO of Retaaza. Retaaza is a hyper local distributor that cares about farmers' food waste and also food access for our neighborhoods.
Okay, Retaaza. We're gonna jump right into it because that's why I wanted to have you on.
Okay.
All right. So as far as I can tell, because I've known you for quite some time, Retaaza is a big change in the type of business that you've been creating in the past, right?
It is, but we are returning back to our roots, our tech roots. So
Yeah.
as of this week. But to talk a little bit about what we do, yes, in a million years, you could not have told me I would be selling zucchini, bushels of zucchini that never imagined that would be my life. But it's awesome. I love to play in the dirt with our farmers and love to make an impact. So what we're doing is literally buying bushels and boxes and pallets of produce and creating new markets for this local food. And it's a very manual process right now. We use Google Sheets and we're trying to string a bunch of free tools together. And that's how we've been doing it for 5 years with lots of data points. And then also tracking on the family side and the hunger side, how are we really helping people in our neighborhoods? And it's all been super manual, but starting in about a month, we're going to start the build out of our big tech platform that we've been planning on building for the last year and a half. And a lot of what we've done to this date has informed what we're going to build. So
Okay.
kind of great.
Got it.
I'm excited.
Right. Give me an example of I don't know if you call them customers or relationship, but so that people can really get their hands around exactly what you're doing. What's a good case study?
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the perfect example of everything that our company does. So we have a customer who wants to buy produce. We take that order, we go to a farm, we call a local farm exclusively and say, we need corn. We need peaches. So we place that order. We only place orders for produce that we've basically pre-sold. So we're not holding anything in our warehouse for now. So we're buying this corn. We are picking it up, handling all the logistics for the farmer. We pick it up and we drop it off at the customer. Because we have made that money, we can do a couple of things. We can turn around and donate a portion of what we made to a nonprofit in the form of produce. So we do a lot of that, supporting our local food access nonprofits with donations of this amazing product. And we also operate markets. And so that's the other part of our food access work, where because we are making money from our customers, we are able to subsidize the cost of amazing produce stands in neighborhoods so that it is super low cost, still a cost, but super affordable to buy fresh produce in our markets and in our neighborhoods. So that's the continuation. The other piece about the food waste, 40% of what farmers grow is not used, and it gets wasted for a lot of reasons. We are able to buy what farmers aren't able to sell that turns into waste because we have these customers, because we have these supply chains. So we don't only buy the waste, but we have set up a supply chain within our ecosystem and with our customers so that when there is waste in the ecosphere, we can handle it and it's not an emergency.
Okay. Got so many good questions here for you.
Okay.
So where did the idea come from 5 years ago when you started this, or had you had it for a long time and then you finally pulled the trigger?
No, this is a random one. So I've been working in global food and poverty access, education as a volunteer with CARE and with other humanitarian organizations for a long time, thinking about food here with some nonprofits that I've been a part of, but never quite like this. And I was on a statewide task force at the time, really positioned to think about how Georgia could be more innovative and innovation leaders in certain ways. The pandemic hit. We launched in January 2020, that task force. In March, the world shut down. And our mandate was to think statewide about innovation. And I know that Georgia is an ag state. It's our biggest industry. It's an $83.6 billion industry.
Wow.
Which is nuts. So I knew that it was our biggest industry. And then I started seeing the news running headlines and articles about farmers throwing out produce by the record tons of pounds and milk by the record tons of gallons. And this was like in Iowa. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is life-giving, amazing, beautiful food. How is it just going in the garbage? Like just going in a landfill? There's got to be a better use for that. And then there were also news stories running about our neighbors lined up at food banks in record numbers at the same time. You know, nobody was getting out of their cars. Everybody was like in their car, trunk popped, lined up to the highway. And they were showing these like massive lines. And I was like, on one hand, we're throwing out food. On the other hand, people don't have enough and they could really use support. It feels like a no-brainer to connect these two groups. Why isn't that happening? There's got to be a reason. It's not that nobody's thought of it. So like, what's the issue? And so because the world had shut down and because I had this mandate, I took the next 60 to 90 days and deep dived. I called everyone I could think of in the local food ecosystem. I started with Bill Bowling in Atlanta, who is Mr. Local food and food access, and was like, Bill, who do I need to talk to? And he started me down a path. And then I talked to all the stakeholders and I just asked, what does your day look like? What does your week look like? What are you struggling with? And emerged a lot of things that somebody could come in and do as an entity. But I didn't think I was starting this for sure.
Right.
I had all this information and I went back to our task force and I said, look at what I found. We should figure out how to do something like this. And they said, sounds like a great project for you.
You're right.
So that's how it happened.
That's how it happened. One of the things that I love about your story getting into Retaaza is that we need more minds like yours. We need people coming out of innovation, coming out of startup, comfortable breaking things, questioning things in industries like farming and agriculture. I've become a big fan of the work Bill Gates is doing, as an example, right? The fact that he's putting his mind that had typically been towards software and innovation to some of the world's biggest health problems. And so the more that people like yourself can find that passion and get in there, I just think it's really exciting. That said, I mean, my gosh, like you probably know more about farming than you ever would have imagined you ever would have known.
And trucks and logistics. You know, people thought we were crazy starting a supply chain business in the middle of a supply chain crisis. I don't know if you remember, but like you couldn't get toilet paper and like all kinds of other things. Shelves were bare, but local food was still there. We were still able to pick up food and deliver to customers when we got started during the pandemic because it's literally down the street. You know, we don't have to rely on a container to get here. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to pay for a truck. I didn't know what that ratio should look like in a logistics company. We just figured it out. I called as many people as it took to find a truck that would work with us. And it ended up not being a truck. It ended up being a Sprinter that was already circulating around South Georgia, which is where our first clients were. And so we still work with them. They've been an amazing partner. And
yeah,
you just figure out how to get started, right?
Amazing. Yeah, I love it. Have you read the book, The Fish That Ate the Whale?
No.
Okay. You should read that
I
book.
feel a lot like that.
I can't even remember the guy's name. It's a really fascinating biography, but he basically became, I don't know, the biggest banana producer. But
I've heard of this.
yeah,
Yes.
he started it by the bananas that they were throwing out. And sort of like you, he's like, look, they're throwing these out because they're going to be bad in a day or two, but I can
Yeah.
take them and
Yeah.
get them to people who need them.
Yeah.
And so anyways, it's a really fascinating business book you might check out.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great.
So the name, talk about the name, Retaaza.
So I thought long and hard about what I would name a company that is doing a lot of things, right? We're rethinking supply chain. We're rethinking or refreshing supply chain, I should say. We're refreshing how we treat farmers. We're rethinking what it means to get neighbors food. It's affordable, it's better quality. So we're rethinking a lot of things, refreshing a lot of things. And so refresh to me felt like what we were doing to the food system. And I really wanted that to be part of the name, fresh, also it's produce. But if you can imagine, fresh or refresh as it relates to basically anything in food is taken.
Mm-hmm.
There's no URL, there's no LLC available, nothing. So I started going to other languages and it's funny, I went to Spanish and Latin and Greek and like anything I could think of. And then I was like, wait, I have another language at my disposal, Hindi, which, I'm Indian, my background. And so, Taza, Taaza, means fresh.
Mm.
And I was like, well, if we put re in front of it, it's kind of a cool and funky word. Re means again, fresh. Retaaza. So we made up a word and I was like, if this is taken, I'm giving up. And it was available. So it became just like a really great standout. I didn't want to be confused with other companies. There's so many companies that use the word fresh or local or harvest or market or, all of those things. And when Retaaza shows up, I want you to know it in a lot of different ways. Just from quality, experience, how we treat people. And I want us to stand out. So what we say is we're refreshing the way we feed community. And that means a lot of things. Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you created a word. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Why
That's
not?
great. Yeah.
We're making up all the other things as we go along. We might as well just like make up words at the same time.
That's right. That's right. I'm curious. So like, as you've built this, would you call yourself a serial entrepreneur?
Sure.
Yeah,
Seasoned.
I think so.
Seasoned.
Seasoned. Okay. I like that. Seasoned.
I feel like serial connotates like you just like keep,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. When people say that to me, I'm like, it feels like I'm just jumping to the next thing. Like I do like to lay roots and work on something for a long time.
Correct.
So serial feels, I like seasoned. Okay. So given that you're a seasoned entrepreneur, I'm curious, this being, a new company you started 5 years ago and as it's grown over time, are you a different leader for this team? And because you've been around the block and you've done a lot of different things. And so I'm always curious about that. And then I would also ask, like, are there different characteristics maybe you look for in team members than maybe you did before? Like, do you value certain things now that you've been doing this for a while versus like when you first started, or maybe even different tech startup versus agricultural company?
Yeah. That's interesting. So I think one thing I've always leaned on, when you first get started and this, like you really think about like, what are the skills of the position I'm hiring for and who's the best person and fit. You're always looking for fit. One thing that has become more important to me throughout my career, and it's the number one thing I hire for now, is positivity. I think a lot of people can do a lot of jobs, but I think being positive lends yourself to being an entrepreneur more. Maybe that's controversial, but it's that can do. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to get bogged down by a no. Okay, let me dust myself off. It's just easier. You know, if you have that can do, let's go smile spirit, you're a better teammate because you can help pick others up when they're down. You are willing to try stuff. So I think that's the number one thing that I look for. Outside of that, I've never hired for hourly workers before, hourly staff. And so that has been really new for us. A lot of our market staff, yes, they're part-time, but they're hourly. And that has been really interesting to figure out how to create that type of a workforce. It comes with its own challenges for sure.
Yeah, I bet that's different. I've had similar experience with, now as part of the Purpose Group portfolio, having a print company in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and most of the employees are hourly.
Yeah.
And so it is very different. What about you as a leader though? Like, are there certain things, like for me, for instance, I feel like I'm much more of a long-term thinker than I was early on.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be tomorrow, we got to crush everything. It's like, let's lay the foundation and build over time. So that would be a big shift I think I've gone through. What about you?
I agree with that. I think I mentioned at the beginning, we are just starting the build out of our technology. That feels like something we could have built years ago and still have it be really useful for the company, but we would have built something a little different. I have been really impatient to build it, but I have waited until the right moment. That's not something I think I would have done 10 years ago. Like, we need it. Let's go. Let's build it. Let's do it. This is going to make our lives easier. I was willing to suffer. And really, I think my team might not love this, but like, we were all willing to suffer through really understanding what our business looks like before building. And now I think we're going to have something really strong. There are projects that we are taking now that may or may not be the best business contract we could have landed, but long-term, they are really going to set us up. One of the things that we have recently started doing in the last year is mixed boxes. They're very labor intensive. That is a huge effort.
And just so I understand, a mixed box is like multiple, produce or product
like,
in the box.
Like 5 or 6, 7 items in a box. To do 50 of those, 100 of those, that takes people, it takes boxes, it takes figuring out how we're going to deliver them. It's a process. And again, there are a lot of things that I am doing as part of Retaaza that I never thought. I was like, we're never going to do that. And then business need, you can always get too unfocused as well. And so you have to watch that. But if it's within mission, we had partners come to us and say, look, we buy from you, we buy produce from you in these other ways. Our provider who is creating these boxes is not doing them anymore. We would really love to see if you could do them for us. It lined up in a lot of ways for our business. And so I said yes before I knew how we were going to do it. But it felt like the right move to support a partner, to be part of a nutrition box program. And so much of what we want to be getting into is nutrition and is that food as medicine space. And we're kind of playing in it with our corporate benefits program. But this is a way to really do it from a food access perspective. So I said yes, not knowing what the heck we were doing. And it has blossomed into what I think is going to be one of our biggest programs of the year. And we started in April.
I love it.
So you just kind of never know. But sometimes you have a gut feeling if you know what's going on in the industry and you have a gut feeling of what's coming. Like at the time, it was a crazy move just to say yes for like this small client who we want to help, and felt like a lot of work for them. But thank goodness, like that has worked out for us, and knock on wood is going to become a much bigger piece of how we are affecting people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm curious, is the work you're doing now, because you've been on many nonprofit boards and been a part of many nonprofits. You've obviously started for-profits. Is this like, I know it's a lot of hard work and a lot of learnings and breaking things, but is it gratifying in a different way for you doing this work?
100%. You know, every day is hard, especially in the first several years. We're 5 years in. It's hard to imagine that that's true. And it feels like in some ways we're very established for the conversations that we're starting to have and the traction we're starting to build. But because we're tackling the issues that we're tackling, there's always something new. There's always a new challenge. It's not like software where like we're in a vacuum and like AI is the new thing, but like how you think about finance or, you know, the industry seems somewhat stable. Like how you bank is different than like today. But banking as a career, as a industry is still the same. You're trading money back and forth. You know, food, how you access food, how people buy food is fundamentally changing based on the kind of programs that are in place, the kind of resources that are in place. So things are hard all the time. Mm-hmm. Especially in purpose-driven work, I think, because you're always straddling that line between having to make money as a business to your shareholders and whoever your stakeholders are, and then also wanting to deliver that impact. So where is that line? I think that's always a tension because we want to do so much mission impact-driven work, but it's not always profitable.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we talk about it, like, really all of my purpose-driven companies is like, you can't do this kind of work if your revenue, your finances, your profit is chaotic. If you're constantly like, how are we going to pay next payroll? Look, it's really hard to be thoughtful and strategic about your decisions. And so, I remember so clearly as we were building Dragon Army and getting the question like, hey, why are we so focused on profit if we're, a purpose-driven company trying to inspire happiness? And it became very clear to me that like, look, we've been through tough times when, we felt like we were constantly bailing water out of the ship. And remember, we had to take any kind of work that came our way. Like we had to struggle. And so I think, that's protecting the ship and building a solid business allows you to get there. But I know that's got to be tough, especially in this environment. And so that's another question I want to ask you. Like, what are you finding? Is the current climate, no pun intended, difficult for you and the team? Are you finding more opportunities right now? Like, how is your business?
It's challenging. We don't have a ton of grants right now and don't have a ton of federal grants, which is a blessing. Didn't feel like a blessing, a couple of years ago, but we are not being directly affected. Like programs are not being affected, but what I will say is the current climate is affecting decision-making from a client's perspective. So we've been talking to some giant manufacturers. They use a lot of steel. They use a lot of product that are currently in question. And so they're trying to now balance like these conversations we've been having for a year to land them as clients are now all of a sudden up in the air because they don't know what their landscape is going to look like, what their finances are going to look like. So it's impacting us from that perspective. So I guess that's kind of directly, but not directly on program spend. Right. It almost feels harder in some way because we never know who's going to be affected, who's going to feel the pinch, who's not going to care that they're feeling a pinch. makes conversations a little bit more unpredictable.
Yeah. Yep. I can see that. Okay. So I've got a question for my 13-year-old. So he is a little entrepreneur in the making and he is watching, he's watching somewhere else in the house, this conversation, because it's live. So his question was, what advice would you give to a 13-year-old who one day wants to be an entrepreneur at, at this stage of his life?
Oh, the same advice. Ooh, sorry. My dogs have decided that they want to.
I love it. They want to be a part of the show.
They want to be a part of it. And they are playing. Hey,
they like that question.
They are very excited about it. Stop it. So I would say the same advice that I wish I had heard when I got started, and he's getting started way younger than I did, is don't ask for permission. Don't wait for permission. If you have an idea, get started. And that is related to perfect is the enemy of progress. If you have an idea, make sure it's well researched. Like, make sure you understand who's doing what in the industry and what value you are bringing. But then put it out there, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not wholly formed, because you will get more feedback. And I tell every entrepreneur this, you'll get more feedback on your idea, what resonates, but your ears have to be open, right? What are you hearing from your audience? And if you're hearing nothing, that should tell you something. If everybody's loving this one piece, markets and this B2C part of our company is not something that I thought I would be building, but it has really taken off in a crazy way. And I'm having to listen to what the market is asking of us right now. And so we're going to build to it, but we're not going to abandon what I think is really going to take us far, and able to create more impact in the long term. But sometimes it's a balance.
Yeah, it's really great advice. And I think that's when do you hold your ground and stay firm in your idea? Steve Jobs, I think, never wanted to hear what the customer said ever, and it worked out for him. But I think in most cases, you've got to walk that line. So no, that's great advice. That's great advice. I'm sure he heard that upstairs. Excited to hear that. All right, my last question, and this sort of goes along with, one day I want to go on a tour of some farms with you. I want to ride, I'll meet you. We'll ride around. I want to see these farms. I'm so interested in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know why this is a question I want to ask you, but tell me about these farms. Are they, I don't know. I want to say the word adorable. I know they're hardworking, everything, but I'm just picturing the classic farm, but what are we talking about?
Some of them are adorable and some of them are the biggest farms in Georgia. They all have the same problem of not being able to sell all of their product and having loads rejected. I mean, the biggest farmer in Georgia is having the same issue with weather that a smaller urban farm in Atlanta is having, right? Maybe weather's a little bit different a few hours south, but, everybody's watching how much rainfall we're getting right now. I mean, I've never watched the weather more than I have watched in the last 5 years. I have my weather set to Tifton and Albany and just all the centers to understand what's going on around the state. These farmers, it does not matter where they are. They are so hardworking, just lovely human beings that want to feed the world. And, I think they need to be part of this solution also. This platform that we're going to build, we want the farmers, to understand where their food is going. I think often we leave them out of the conversation, and they're stakeholders just like everybody else. They're the beginning part of this food supply chain. How are we not treating them with the fairness, dignity, respect that they deserve, that they are providing for all of us? That is really one of the things that got me started, as I heard all the struggles. I talked to a lot of farmers before we got started, and I just could not believe how unfair. You can have a signed contract and still not have it be honored. It's crazy. So these farmers, yes, some of them have the cutest farms. They've got animals running around. I went to one farm that we work with all the time, and there's like chickens everywhere. It's like what you would picture, just like chaos, chickens just like roaming. And then another, like, one of the biggest farms, as I mentioned, surprise, they really started with greenhouses. I had no idea. So indoor ag also is becoming a giant thing here in Georgia. And so it's a different kind of farm. It's the more high-tech farm in some ways. But indoor agriculture does not have to be high-tech. It's just, climate controlled. So farming is starting to look a lot of different ways.
I can't imagine 5 years ago you'd ever have thought you were saying that sentence. Farming is really changing.
It's really changing. But at the end of the day, everyone needs a delicious tomato.
That's right. Yeah. So how can people, what's the best reason for people to reach out to you? Obviously farms, we know, why they would want to reach out to you and partner with you. What are other case studies that we can, have people be thinking about reaching out?
Well, I love this question because everyone can be part of a solution to really help farmers, help our families, help our planet. We measure everything that we divert. And so we can really tell people how their behavior is impacting stakeholders around the globe. If you are an individual, shop local, come to one of our markets, go to a farmer's market, but support local food. That footprint is so much lower. Also, the nutrient quality that you have in local food is so much better than what you get at the grocery store. It hasn't been sitting around, and nutrients do degrade over time. So if you're trying to really focus on health and wellness, come shop at one of our markets. It's on our website, or shop at another local market you can find. What I will say, if you are a company, consider your purchasing power. Consider the procurement power that you have through one of your food management companies like Sodexo, Compass, and Aramark, whoever you're working with. Request that you're using local food. You have purchasing power. Use it. That will make a difference. And then if you don't have a cafeteria, if you're not doing food within your business, you can still buy. So consider doing local food as a benefit for your employees, and call us and we'll tell you how you can have this amazing produce show up at your office.
Awesome. All right. Well, people, you heard it. Let's get out there, and I'm gonna find one of the markets. I haven't been to a market, I'm embarrassed to say, so I'm gonna find one. Do you go to all of them?
We have so many now, I can't get to all of them. But which is, I think, a good problem. But I will be at a couple this week, and then we're launching MARTA markets in 2 weeks. Ooh. So we'll be at 7 MARTA stations.
Oh, that's cool. I love that.
Yeah. So we'll be meeting riders where they are on their way home from work.
I love it. Smart. All right, Kashi, thanks for all the work you're doing in this area. Thanks for joining me and spending the time. I love what you've done first 5 years. I'm excited to see what you do the next 5.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. See you soon.
Okay. Bye.